Going back to Cloud Firestore, we have a few books here for this user in particular, right? For this current user, which is Mr. John Lala. So he has a few books that he's added to the database. Now we are going to pull all these books and show into our app here, because this is all, so far, this is all dummy data. But we just wanted, obviously we wanted to have a structure in which we would be able to add the real data. And at this point, we're ready to do that. And that's what we will do. Okay, so let's go back to our code. We're going to go to reading list, no more. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to go back to our main screen, because this is where this is being called. So we are going to make this even better because we're going to get the right data. Now, where do we get these books from? Because we need to go and pull all these books, right? And show them here through our list view builder. That's the whole point. In fact, you know that we are inside of a stream builder, and that makes sense because we're getting that snapshot already and life is good. But we need to do something here. Really, what we want to do, because we are going to have a lot of books. Remember that books collection contains these documents, which are books, and each document has the actual fields. So for book, we have author, categories, blah, 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 and so forth. And most importantly, we have this user ID. This is important because you will see now, as we get more users, because all the books that are added, even if we have like 10,000 users, all the books are going to be added here as documents. So we need to always go and filter and get the books that correspond to the user who is logged in. That's why we have this user ID attached. Every time we add a new book, that book has this user ID field, and then we pass in the user who is logged in, who added this. We pass their user ID. At this point, of course, we can just go and get all the books because there's only one person who is logged in and has those books. But we're going to put the structure so that we can always filter the books corresponding to the user or belonging to the current user. Let's go back to our code. So right before our expanded, where we return our list view, we are going to filter some stuff. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say var book filtered red list stream. Quite a long name, but it's okay. In the end, we are going to do more filtering, but for now, I'm just going to go and pick the books and just pull them in, and that's all, okay? But later, this will make sense. Because remember, the idea is to have books that they're reading, and then here's going to be just the list of books that they have added. Okay, but one step at a time. So what are we going to do? Well, we need to get the snapshot, which contains objects, query snapshot objects in the form of an async snapshot. Okay, so we are going to take that information, the snapshot, I'm going to say snapshot as such, and I'm going to invoke the data method and go and get the documents. So all the documents, so I'm going to get all the list. And once I do that, I'm going to map them into an actual book object. Because remember, the same way that they are added into our database as a map, it's going to be the same way that they are retrieved. That way, that's why we are going to actually map those back into a book object, so that way it's easier for us to deal with. Okay? So I'm going to say map, there is that function, and voila. So I'm going to just change a few things here. If you hover over, that's E is a query document snapshot. Okay, let's change that to something that we understand, to the book. Okay, and I'm going to make this actually, instead of this arrow function, I want to convert that to block body. Okay, life is good here, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not over yet. So now if you hover over, this book is a query document snapshot, okay, containing object. So we need to then actually return something. In fact, there is already a return. What is that we're going to be returning? Well, we want to return a book, right? Dot from document. As such. Now, we're having an issue here. We just have to import the book. If you import the package, then you can see that this will actually work. Looks like, let's start over again. Book dot from. We don't have the from document. We have the from map. So we need to create that. Let's go back to our book. Okay, we have to map. we called it from map. Let's say from document, because there's some differences here. I'm going to say from document. Again, the name doesn't really matter, but because we're going to change the parameters we're going to be passing, this will make sense. So instead of just data as such, we are going to change this to the query document snapshot. Call this data. Now, how do I know this is supposed to be query document snapshot? Well, I know this because if I go back here, if you hover over, we know that whatever we're passing here is going to come in as a query document snapshot. That's how we know. Okay. Now, we're going to have the same problem as we had before when we were talking about users, in that somehow this version of Firestore, it brings the data here that we're getting, it just brings in as a document snapshot object types that are going to be coming in. So really we need to actually get a map first. So I'm going to convert that by saying map string dynamic, because those are the types that we're bringing in anyway from the database. Call this info. We can call whatever we want. And then I'm going to say data that we're getting this data snapshot here. I'm going to go ahead and say data. That's the object or method that we want to get the actual object. In this case, is going to be a map. So we're pulling it all in and make this data object to be a map, which is going to be exactly something like this when it comes in. All right, sorry for the interruption, but this is Paulo again from the future. I just want to share with you good news in a way. As I was saying that we had to change this data type into a map so that this works. It turns out in a newer version of Firestore, Firebase Firestore, SDKs do change constantly. Although that still works, this process here that I was showing you just now, the better way now, the SDK, the Firestore SDK, allows us to do something like this, right? As you see here in the code, you'll see this remark there. So you can actually say data and invoke the get method and pass the field. So in this case here, you just go ahead and say data.get. So you no longer need to put into a map. Okay, just go straight from query document snapshot, data.get, pass in the title and all the fields. Okay, so I commented out this old way, which still works, but it's more work than we need to do, obviously. So that's something that I wanted to share with you, so you can actually use this way. Okay, if it doesn't work, that means you have a previous version of SDK. That means you still have to do this way, but most likely you can do this way. Okay, now we can use this info to append in front here. Notice we're not going to do the ID because the ID is actually directly connected to the data as it comes in, because that's the ID of the document, meaning this ID here for the document. So we don't need to go probe in as we did to get that ID. Important detail. Anything else, of course, we need to dig into data and get that information. So in this case here, I'm just going to say info, just append info where we have data like that. Oops. All right, there we go. Let's save this. Now, when we go here, I can now use the from document and pass that book, and there we have it. Let's save. That's good. Now, this book stream here, this will just go ahead and get all of these books, which is fine. But before we do that, we need to do something else. We need to say dot to list, because we want to make that into a list that we can actually use. Very important detail, because remember, we still have to pass that list inside of this item count so that the list view builder knows what to build and how to build. So now I can use, say, user book filtered dot length, and we should be good. Because we're inside of list view builder, inside now we can access the book object. Again, just like we did before with user, there's different ways to do this. So for our button text, it could be, so for instance, for the title of the books that we're receiving, I'm going to just get rid of all of this, and I can say, right, user book filtered. It's actually a long name, and I'm going to pass the index, right, because it's just a list. And because when we pass the index, now this becomes the object, the book object. That's why we can access the author. In this case, we want title like this, right? can do the same thing. But now this is not really the best way to do, because if we want to use the book object on many other fields, then we have to type all of this. So let's go ahead and put that outside. This is going to be just a book object, right? So I'm going to say book is equal to that. And voila, now we can just use this book as intended and put it there. There we go. And it's much easier. And I can say book.author like this. And even I can pass the book image as well, right? Because remember, on our database, we have passed the image as well, photo URL. All right, so for now, because I know I'm going to get something, well, in most cases anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and say photo URL. Let's get rid of this because we no longer need that. That was when we're testing things out. Let's save this. All right, so it looks like we have a problem here. Let's see what may be the problem. Let's go to terminal and do some debugging, and just to make sure. We may have added something that doesn't exist, obviously. Okay, fill doesn't exist. It's going to be in main screen 134. That's where we are. Let's continue. So it seems like there is one field that doesn't exist that we're trying to get. So let's go back and look at our book, because probably something's not right here. So we have user ID, page count, description, all of this. Ah, right. This is the problem. So our data here that we're passing, this one here, it's not a map. Again, because remember, this is just the ID of this document, right? So we don't have to go through to get to the map, because there's no such thing here. We want to get directly from the document. So it's going to be .id, not passing in as a map. Okay, so this is wrong. Okay, that's my fault. That's okay, but just things to remember. So if I say data.id, then you can get the ID of this document. Okay, let's save this. I think this time we should be fortunate enough to get this to work, hopefully. All right, let's check again. And voila. Yes, it's working. So we have 4 books, Flutter projects. We have this other one here, and everything is doing good. So we have some issues there for the size, but that's something we can work with easily. But most of it, it's working perfectly, and we see there. Now, the great thing is, if I go up and add a new book, look at this. Let's add development, hit enter, and I'm gonna just add Mr. Rito Meyer. I'm gonna save that. If I go back, you're gonna see there it is already added. This is because we have a stream builder, so it connects with our backend instantly and knows when there's changes. It listens to those changes in a stream and then updates right away. Very good. So it's working. All right. That's always exciting. All right. So again, make sure on your data book.dart that the ID, it's always the ID to the document. It's not the ID to the collection per se, or to the fields. Okay, it has to be to the document. That's why you have to go directly and get the ID. This was my mistake. So just remember that particularity. All right, so as you see here, excitingly, this is working and I'm very excited. I hope you are as excited as I am. And this is actually starting to get you really, really happy, because I am happy. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.